So before we look at what Ḥasdai Crescas has to say, I brought a couple of one important text from the Rambam. This is probably the most famous place in the Mishneh Torah where the Rambam talks about Rashut and Bechira. And it's number one. Rashut l'chol adam netuna. Okay, just like he gets from Rabbi Akiva, Kol Safui v'Rashut netuna. Right? Rashut l'chol adam netuna. Im ratza lahatot atzmo l'derech tova v'liyot tzadik, harashut biyado. Kol achad. Everybody has the possibility to be a tzaddik. You're free to be a tzaddik. ואם רצה להטות עצמו לדרך רעה ולהיות רשע, הרשות בידו. And you also have the possibility to be a rasha. So everybody has this freedom to be either a tzaddik or a rasha. hu shekatuv b'Torah. Now here we would expect them to say something like uvacharta b'chayim. Right? That's the normal pasuk that you quote in a situation like this. He doesn't say uvacharta b'chayim. He says hu shekatuv b'Torah hein ha'adam haya ke'echad. Notice I put a comma after echad. Mimenu ladat tov v'ra. Right? So the kolomar, and he reads, the Rambam reads this pasuk like onklos. Right? Pasuk like onklos. Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad. Because otherwise the pasuk is very difficult for the Rambam, as we see from more in the Buchim. The pshat of this pasuk is difficult for the Rambam, because what does the pshat say? It says, Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad mimenu. That Adam Rishon, by eating of the pri, has become divine. And the Rambam says the opposite. By eating of the pri, Adam Rishon loses his divine status. So Rambam doesn't read Achad mimenu ladat tov v'ra, that Adam has become like one of us to know good and evil. But he says Adam has become unique. Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad. He's become like one. Mimenu, of himself, he knows good and bad. He subjectively knows good and bad. The Rambam gives his own translation of the pasuk according to Onkelos. Hein ha'adam hazeh ke'echad. He has become one and unique. Hein min zeh shel adam haya yachid ba'olam. Right? Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad means, hein means this species of the human being has become unique. Yachid ba'olam, ve'ein min sheni domeh lo, v'zeh ha'inyan. So he's become ke'echad. Hein ha'adam haya ke'echad. He's become unique among all the animals. Why? Sheyehu me'atzmo. Mimenu. Mimenu doesn't mean of us, it means of him. Right? Mimenu ladat, mimenu beda'ato uv'machshavto yodea hatov v'hara v'oseh kol ma shehu chafetz. Ve'ein mi sheye'akev biyado mila'asot hatov v'hara. No one can stop a human being from doing either good or bad, either becoming a tzaddik or a rasha. So everyone is responsible. You can't blame somebody else. You're a tzaddik, it's because you chose to be a tzaddik. If you are a rasha, it's because you chose to be a rasha. But since that's the case, ken yishlach yado. There's a possibility that you can reach out and you can choose anything. You can also choose Eitz HaChaim. Just like you can choose Eitz HaDat Tov v'Ra, you can also choose Eitz HaChaim. Ken yishlach yado. Now, if you notice here, what kind of a rashut is the Rambam talking about? He's saying that Adam Harishon, when Adam Harishon was absolutely perfect and shalem, he didn't have rashut. You only get rashut when you start to sin, when you start to go off the direct path. Because if you follow only your sechel, the sechel has no rashut. Why doesn't the Seichel have no Rashut? I don't have any Rashut to think that 2 and 2 is 5. My intellect forces upon me to know that 2 and 2 is 4. The moment you have Rashut is the moment you're not thinking straight. And then, when you're not thinking rationally, you have a million choices. Then you have the Rashut. The more you think rationally, the less Rashut you have. So when the Rambam talks about Rashut, he's not talking about determinism in the sense of physical determinism. He's talking about what happens when you live in accordance with the imagination. When you live which we all live in accordance with the imagination. Only Adam Rishon, and also Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, was pure. Moshe Rabbeinu only maybe at the moment at Har Sinai was pure intellect. Adam Rishon created his pure intellect. But outside of that, all human beings live mostly according to the imagination, according to the Koach HaMidameh, not according to... And the Koach HaMidameh gives you a million possibilities, infinite possibilities of everything to do. The Seichel tells you exactly what... The Seichel doesn't give you a choice. That's the... If you live according to the Seichel entirely, you have no Rashut. The Seichel forces the Emet on you, and there's only one Emet. There's a lot of... Sheker is very big. But Emet is only one. Okay, so that's what the Rambam is talking about, and therefore this most important passage in the Rambam, which talks about the Rashut, is not talking about physical determinism, but it's talking about choice and the difference between intellect and imagination. Now let's see what Rav Hasdai Crescas. Rav Hasdai Crescas raises the question: is there such a thing as the efshar, as the possible, as something that doesn't necessarily have to be? And here's what he says in number 2.
Excuse me. No question.
What is the main argument of those who say that there is such a thing as possibility, that some things are possible? Namely, not everything is determined. Right? There's a view, when the philosophers ask, is everything determined? Right? Was it absolutely determined that I was going to have cranberry lime seltzer? Right? Was that absolutely determined, or could it have happened that I got some other kind of a drink? Right? Is everything determined? And so the first, one of the answers, Hasdai Crescas brings a lot of answers to prove that there's a possible, and one of them is b'veur da'at mi sheyireh sheteva ha'efshar nimtza v'hinei yitba'er ze im mitzad ha'iyum ve'im mitzad ha'torah im mitzad ha'iyum yira'eh mipanim. So there are various ways, according to reason, why it looks like there's such a thing as the possible. Umehem, and this happens to be Hatana Shena, she'anachnu nireh harbe mihadvarim nitlim baratzon. One sees that there are lots of things that happen with us that are dependent on our will. Nitlim baratzon, dependent on our will. V'hu mivawar she'ha'adam lo she'yirtzeh v'shelo yirtzeh. So I can pick up this pen, or I can put down the pen. I can pick it up or not pick it up, right? So it looks like this is completely a possibility, a thing of possibility. I can either pick it up or not pick it up. It all depends on my will. My will, I'm completely free. So that looks like there's not such a thing as determinism. There's no determinism because I can either pick up the pen or not pick up the pen. Umehem she'anachnu nireh harbe me'advarim nitlim b'ratzon. V'hu mevouar she'adam lo she'yirtzeh v'shelo yirtzeh. Lema she'im haya be'achad ha'dvarim mechuyav. If I were forced to pick up the pen, lo haya haratzon ela hechrach v'chiyuv, then the will would not be will, but necessity. Hinei im ken hu mevuar sheteva ha'efshar nimtza. So this proves, according to the people who believe in free will, that the very fact that I can either pick up this pen or not pick up the pen proves that some things are not determined. Right? You can't say that it's determined that I'm going to pick up this pen because I'm completely free to pick it up or not pick it up. Right? So there's no way of knowing. And everybody here who you can take out the best computer and put in all the facts of the universe, but you're not going to know whether I'm going to pick up the pen or not because I'm completely free to pick it up. But okay, now we'll see the arguments again. This is what people argue for freedom. And then we look at number 3. V'ulam hatana hashniya, with regard to this argument, halakucha min haratzon, the argument that the fact that we have will proves that some things are not determined. Lema shehu mivoar sheha'adam lo sheyirtze v'shelo yirtze, hu ma'aracha al hadarush. Right? Ma'aracha al hadarush is what's called in modern Hebrew hanachat hamivukash, or what's called in Latin petitio principii, or what's called in English begging the question. What's it called in Yiddish? Begging the question. There must be an expression.
Schnar de Frage.
Yeah, okay. Right. So it's ma'aracha al hadrush, or hanachat hamivukash. Ki ha'omer beheder teva haratzon, the person who is omer beheder teva ha'efshar, those who are determinists and say that there's no such thing as possibility, ha'omer beteva ha'efshar, le'mor yomar, he will say, ki haratzon lo menia yaniehu. So it's true that I can pick up the pen or not pick up the pen, and it looks like I'm completely free to do it. But my will has a cause. My will has a cause. True, my will can pick it up or not pick it up. But we can go back and start looking for reasons for that will. We can look up for causes for that will. Biological causes inside me, or psychological causes, or all kinds of causes that are forcing me to pick up the pen. So yes, it's true, I can pick it up or not pick it up according to my will, but my will could have reasons according to those who say that everything is determined. And the cause, right? The cause of that motion is the cause of the will. My will remains a will even after we say, but by the way, you know, of course it's really true that you chose that cranberry lime seltzer according to your will and it was completely free choice. But you know the reason you chose that cranberry lime soda is because you hadn't had cranberry lime soda for a while and you saw it and you thought that would be better than just plain seltzer, right? There are physiological reasons inside, biological reasons why your sense of taste forced you to go for the cranberry lime soda as opposed to plain seltzer or as opposed to raspberry seltzer. You think it's just your will ex nihilo, but the will does not act out of nothing. The will is a will, and you will what you want, and whatever you want. If you want to drink the cranberry lime, the will tells you to drink the cranberry lime. You want to pick up the pen, you pick up the pen. But there are reasons that are forcing your will to do that. There are causes that the will has. So, hamenia hahu yihiyeh sibat haratzon, v'lezeh yihiyeh המניע ההוא המחייב חול הרצון, אם הישאר הרצון הרצון. We still call the will, even though we know that the will has causes. It's still a will. It still means that I prefer to have, why is it still a will? Because I really do prefer to have that cranberry lime seltzer over the plain seltzer. That's my will. And if someone had given me the regular seltzer over the cranberry lime seltzer, I would say that goes against my will. Right? It was involuntary. I wanted the cranberry lime. Even though both choices, both phenomena would have had causes, but the first set of causes are pleasing to me, and the second set of causes aren't. Therefore, they say the first cause goes according to the other. Lo chiyuv behechrach, ki hu la'atzmuto, according to a person's essence, right? La'atzmuto efshar, sheyirtzeh, right? According to a person's essence, if you just look at it from the point of view of my own essence, yes, it's true, I can pick up the pen or not pick up the pen. I can get that cranberry soda or not get the cranberry soda. אפשר שירצה על אחד מההפכים בשווה, לולא מניע שיחייבהו שירצה אחד. Right, so I have the option to choose both of them, but in the end I'm choosing one because of causes that are leading me to choose that. V'hu lo yargish, person doesn't, when you choose that you want to pick up the pen or you want to drink the cranberry lime soda, you're not aware of those causes that are taking place inside your body or psychologically, or you're not aware. Uliyot la'atzmuto, efshar sheyirtze kol achad mishnei hafachim b'shaveh, yikarei rotzon v'lo chiyuv. So we certainly use the word rotzon, he says, even though we know that the rotzon has causes. Therefore, the fact that there's a rotzon doesn't prove that the fact that I can say I will something doesn't prove that there's no determinist, that the world is not deterministic. Now let's move on to number 4. V'haya שבמציאות הסיבות יימצא המסובבים. Once you have all the causes, all the effects have to come about. Right? That's the first thing. He says that's the argument. Once you have, this is an argument for determinism. If the causes are there, the effects have to be there. והנה אם כן, מציאות המסובבים מחויב. Once you have the causes, you have to have the effects. And that means that the effects are determined. Lo efshar. The effects are determined, they're not efshar, because once you have causes, the effects follow necessarily. וכאשר נעיין גם כן במציאות הסיבות, הנה, הוא מחויב בהכרח שיקדם מציאות הסיבות, מציאות סיבות אחרות. עליהן. So those causes, if you look for causes of those causes, you'll find that those causes also have causes. וכאשר נבקש לסיבותיהם סיבות אחרות, יהיה המשפט בהם אחד. We can keep on asking for earlier causes and earlier causes and earlier causes, עד שיכלה אל הנמצא הראשון, המחויב המציאות, until we come to the necessary existence, יתברך שמו, התבאר אם כן שטבע האפשר בלתי נמצא. So once you have causes, you necessarily have effects, and once you have them, therefore all those effects are necessarily caused, and those causes themselves have causes, and when you keep on going back and going back and going back, you come to the first cause. Kadosh Baruch Hu is the first cause. Kadosh Baruch Hu is the first cause of everything, and everything that happens. So you can say, why did I pick up this thing? So you can say, because I willed to pick it up. But you can also go all the way back to the first cause, because Kadosh Baruch Hu caused me to pick it up. That's basically what he's saying. Everything that happens is Hasiba Harishona, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Mechuyav HaMetziut. Okay, so this is how Rav Hasdai Crescas, this is his determinist position. He brings a lot of arguments that you can see in the text, but these are the basic arguments that he holds, that all things have causes and everything goes back to the first cause.
Meanwhile, this concept, the Siddhar Shana, this is what the Rambam also says. So what is different than the Rambam? The Rambam also says that you could call Hashem, like the Pesukim that Yosef HaTzadik says, because he's the Siddhar Shana. So really, with what is Crescas arguing with the Rambam, if he's arguing?
Right. So, this is very, Rav Yonasan is always on one big question he wants to know: where exactly is the critique of Rav Hasdai Crescas on, right? That's what I'm supposed to show here in my talk. So, but the fact is, there's a question that I think there's a question with regard to the Rambam. There's a dispute. We have here my colleague, Professor Diamond, who also has worked on these questions. There's a question among students of the Rambam. What is a Rambam believe in determinism, or does he believe in freedom? I think that the Rambam basically agrees, like you can see in Chelik Bet Perek Mem Chet of Moreh Nevuchim. In Chelik Bet Perek Mem Chet, he says there explicitly everything that happens, Kadosh Baruch Hu is the first cause. Right. I think that on this question there is no difference, although Rav Hasdai Crescas makes the point very clearly, and the Rambam just mentions it in one chapter, and he mentions it basically in that chapter in Chelik Bet Mem Chet. He mentions it in a chapter. So I see my talking about the cranberry lime seltzer caused
Permanent. Was
determined.
It was a copycat.
But I think the Rambam also was a determinist. That's really another question.
How do you explain the first keta that he's trying to say that Rishus Yesh L'Chol Adam?
That has nothing to do with whether the Rishut Yesh. That's dealing with the question of the difference between intellectual behavior and imaginative behavior. He's not saying, because otherwise, if you go back to the first text, he's clearly not saying whether Adam Rishon had a physical. He's certainly not saying that Adam Rishon did not have physical causes, but everybody else after Adam Rishon did have physical causes.
But the sin is a totza'ah from causes. Why didn't he want to live only rationally? Why did he start the sin? Because causes. You know? If everything has a cause. He has a will. Why is the will? Well, has a cause. Finish.
Well, that's only after there's like
right, but that's
autonomy, establishing autonomy, basically.
Right, absolutely. But that's really a big question in Moreh Nevuchim, which we won't discuss now. But the question is, the main thing is that what the Rambam is saying in his talking about, when he writes about Gan Eden, he's really saying that the human being can't go forever completely by the seichel. Right? Eventually, Adam Rishon couldn't possibly. You can go for a certain amount of time living according to seichel. The most we can expect of people is that when you have to make an important decision, you go by the seichel. But we can't expect that someone is going to be 24 hours a day ruled by the seichel, because human beings have all kinds of powerful passions and the imagination. So that's the seichel doesn't always. We can't expect that the seichel is going to rule. And even when he talks about Moshe Rabbeinu, he's probably talking, when he says Moshe Rabbeinu was pure seichel, he's probably means Moshe Rabbeinu at the moment of Matan Torah, not Moshe Rabbeinu his whole existence, his whole life. Moshe Rabbeinu at the moment of Matan Torah is pure seichel. And
But let's say the strong influences on a person's decision. Is the ultimate decision more determined of flipping a coin? Or is flipping a coin also determined according to this language?
Yes.
The outcome of flipping a coin is determined? How come it never falls 10 times in the head?
That's determined.
That's determined.
So that's what he's saying? You have a
He's
choice,
saying everything is
using the word
determined. Right, everything. That's what he's saying. Everything. What's the problem?
Statistics are determined.
But that's not what
Okay,
he's saying.
so let's go on so we can have questions after we.
There is a software, we don't know how.
We're up to number 5. ואומנם הטענה הלקוחה מן הגמול והעונש שאם היה right, we're up to 5. ואומנם הטענה הלקוחה מן הגמול והעונש. Right? There's a problem with regard, we ask with regard to reward and punishment. שאם היה האדם מוכרח במעשיו, היה הגמול והעונש עליהם עוול, בחוקו יתעלה. So if a person, this is what the people who believe in freedom say against the determinists. If everything is determined, then it's unfair for Hashem to punish us, or to give us rewards. It's not because we're just doing what we're told to do. It's like if you're playing a part in a play, and the playwright tells you to do it, to say, well, you don't get a reward for that. If two people are in a play and one is playing a tzaddik and the other is playing the rasha, right? We may clap for both of them after the performance, but we don't say, okay, the tzaddik is going to is going to get the prize, and the rasha, he played the rasha. Sometimes if you're playing a part, you're just playing a part. So if all of us are just playing parts that were written for us by Kadosh Baruch Hu, then why should somebody get a reward or a punishment? ואומנם הטענה הלקוחה מהגבול והעונש, שאם היה האדם מוכרח במעשיו, היה הגמול והעונש עליהם עוול, בחוקו יתעלה, ייראה שהיא טענה חזקה. It looks like a strong argument. לבטל את כל חיוב. That looks like a strong argument against determinism. ואומנם, but כשנתבונן בה, when we think about this argument a little bit, אין התרה ממה שיקשה. It's not such a hard argument to answer once we think about it a little bit. וזה שאם היו הגמול והעונש מתחייבים מהעבודות והעבירות, כהתחייב המסובבים מן הסיבות. So the gvul and the onish follow a person's good deeds or averot, just as the effect follows the cause. Hine lo ye'amer bahem heyotam avel. That's the way the world works. You do good deeds, you get a reward. You do bad deeds, you get punished. And that's just the same. What's it like? Kamo she'enenu avel hakarev el ha'esh she'yisarev. That's how the world works. If you stick your hand inside fire, it gets burned. Whether or not you do it willingly or not willingly. And you don't say that it's an avel. You don't blame HaKadosh Baruch Hu if you put your hand inside the fire and it gets burned. You don't think, well, that's unfair. That's the way the world works. Avel, it's she'eino avel hakarev el ha'esh she'yisarev. Ve'im haya korvato elav bezulat ratzon. Even if a person is unwillingly puts his hand into the fire, still, that's the way. That's the world works by sachar va'onish. And if you stick your hand in the fire, it gets burned. And if you do a bad deed, you get punished, whether or not it's voluntary. Okay.
But do you think that this would answer also Mrs. Besen, Unsche Besen? Would answer, let's say, Yidash Shemayim, you could say, this is the Totzah. Could you answer the same thing when Mrs. Besen, when Besen punishes for an Avera? How could you say that? It's natural. What do you mean? Now we're punishing him. It's not a natural thing. You could say, it could be he never had a kasha on Mrs.
No, but the Bezdin also has a cause. There's a story of someone comes before the Bezdin, and he says to the Rabbanim, he says to the Dayanim, you can't punish me because I didn't steal anything. It was the causal chain that stole, not me. It was the causal chain. what do the Dayanim say to him? Don't worry, we're not going to punish you. The causal chain will punish you. Okay, so the Dayanim were also part of the causal system.
The Dayanim is not a question to begin with. The question was only on this.
They're also part of the causal
I
system.
don't know how it could be answered. I mean, it could be part of the causal system, but the question was, if it's a causal system, there's no reason for punishment. So the answer is, like you say, like schar mitzvah mitzvah, schar ve'eras, like you put in the hand of fire. It's not punishment. You can't say that when a human being is putting your punishment on you, that this is an automatic thing. This is not an automatic thing. We're telling human beings what they need to do, but it could be that the question is not a question to begin, because it was only a question on clouds.
Right.
Let's move it along.
Right.
Does this answer
Yeah.
Schar Voinish in Olam Haba?
It's also the Olam Haba, and Olam Hazeh, and also Olam
Well, that's
Haba.
why I asked them if it's a question. If it's a question, I understand the answer. But if it's not,
I think both Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. Okay, let's go on to 6. וכבר העיר השלם, רבי עקיבא, he calls רבי עקיבא השלם, וכבר העיד השלם, רבי עקיבא, אשר נכנס בשלום ויצא בשלום, על כל העמוקות במאמר קצר אומרו, הכל צפוי והרשות נתונה. הנה באומרו הכל צפוי, says הכל צפוי, הורה שהדברים כולם מסודרים וידועים. הכל צפוי, everything is determined. That's what he means by הכל צפוי. כל הדברים מסודרים וידועים. הקדוש ברוך הוא knows everything. Everything is צפוי, sees everything. והוא השורש הגדול אשר אין ספק באמיתתו, אשר נמעד בו רגלי קצת חכמינו, למשל הרלב"ג. הרלב"ג in several places says that there's no way of knowing what's going to be in the future, and even HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know who's going to be a tzaddik and who's going to be a rasha and exactly what's going to, completely what's going to be. והוא אשר הביאנו לגלות הסוד הזה למה שנתפרצו בו רבים מיומתנו היום. ובאומרו והרשות נתונה העיד על סוד הבחירה והרצון. הרשות נתונה, so there are two things, הכל צפוי, that's determinism, והרשות נתונה, even though there's determinism, even though הכל צפוי, הרשות נתונה, still human beings have will. העיד על סוד הבחירה והרצון, כי רשות כל אדם נתונה לו בחינת עצמו. Right? From the point of view, and not from the point of view of the causes, but from the point of view of a person just looking, a person has the will to pick up the pen or not to pick up the pen. When we don't think about the causes that are forcing me now to pick up the pen, if I don't think about the causes and just look at me from my own self and my own abilities, I can pick it up or not pick it up. ובאומרו רשות נתונה העיד על סוד הבחירה והרצון, כי רשות כל אדם נתונה לו בחינת עצמו, כי לא תיפול הצוואה למוכרח ואנוס. So basically, what Prof. Hasdai Crescas is doing in these chapters on the Bechira, as far as he sees what he's doing, is that he's interpreting, he's giving a perush to the Ma'amar of Rabbi Akiva, Hakol Tzafui Barashut Netuna. Hakol Tzafui, everything is determined. Barashut Netuna, from my own point of view, I have will to do or not to do, even though the will itself has causes. Basically, what Rav Hasdai Crescas is doing here, he's saying that his interpretation, his perush, is simply a perush to Rabbi Akiva, called Tzafui Barashut Netuna. He's explaining how to understand. Rav Hasdai Crescas is explaining how to understand Rabbi.
What's the last line?
He believes on his own. It's not
Looking at things, just looking at things in terms of myself, what I have the ability to do or not, without thinking about all the causes, I can pick it up or I cannot pick it up. That's a power that a human being has. A human being has a power to pick up a pen or not pick up a
It's
pen.
meaningless. But it is not a shoot. You can't call it a shoot.
It's reshut, but the reshut has causes. It's a reshut, but the reshut has causes. Why is it well,
We'll elaborate on a lot of that
elaborate,
Q&As
elaborate
later.
elaborate
Yeah.
later. Okay. Now let's move on to some
7.
Seven.
Great.
ולזה היה האמת הגמור כפי מה שהתחייבו, כפי מה שתחייבהו התורה והעיון, שטבע האפשר נמצא בדברים בבחינת עצמם, right? The things, the possibility, the possible existent things, looking at them from the point of view of themselves. What does it mean to be a human being? A human being has the will to stand up or to sit down or to be a tzaddik or to be a rasha. But every human being has that ability, but you can always look and see what the causes are, right? And it's true that this person had the ability to be a tzaddik or a rasha, but we can also say, well, he's a tzaddik, and it's not very strange that his parents were tzaddikim, and they educated him to be a tzaddik, and they gave him good chinuch, and they sent him to good yeshiva, and they took care of him, and they treated him well, and it's not surprising that there's a tzaddik ben tzaddik, right? And it's similarly, if you have a rasha, and the rasha treats his children as a rasha and doesn't give them good chinuch and gives them bad examples, and so it's not going to be strange that that person is going to turn out to be a rasha. So we see people see in daily life that there are causes, even though we say that everybody is responsible, everyone is free. Nonetheless, we can also say, well, it's not surprising that this person turned out to be a tzaddik because his parents are tzaddikim. Okay. Even though all human beings, and the Rambam insists on this, all human beings do have the ability to be a tzaddik or to be a rasha. Nevertheless, it's easier if you happen to have parents who are tzaddikim for you to be a tzaddik than if you have parents who are rashaim. You still have reshut no matter what, but okay. Now we look at number 8. Hine b'deot asher b'pinot hatoriyot. Now we remember that Rav Hasdai said at the beginning when we asked this question. I skipped 7?
The second half.
Oh yes, it's very famous, the second half of 7. It's good that you reminded me. Second half of 7, he says, Eila shehapirs. Usually, the Rambam says about a lot of things that we shouldn't tell the Hamon about this, right? The Rambam is the philosophers, not only the Rambam, philosophers often say you have to be careful not to let the Hamon know about these ideas. Hasdai Crescas says it in only one place. This is the only place where he says you have to be careful not to let the Hamon know about this. He says, Eila shepirsum hazem nizik lahamon. It's not good to tell the Hamon about this determinism. L'mashe yachshaveu hitnatzlut le'osei hara'a. Because when the Hamon hear about determinism, they think it's an excuse for evildoers. Because the evildoers will say, I'm not to blame, it's the causal chain that's to blame. ולא ירגישו שהעונש נמשך מהעבירות כהימשך המסובב מן הסיבה. The Hamon won't be able to understand that punishment follows the crime just as the effect follows the cause. Right? So he says you don't tell this to the Hamon. And in Shadal, Shmuel David Lutzato, he writes about what's the difference between, he says the difference between Rav Hasdai Crescas and Spinoza. He says Spinoza was influenced by Rav Hasdai Crescas. And he says, what's the difference? The difference is, Rav Hasdai Crescas says, everything is determined, but Hashem has freedom to change things. Hashem can do miracles and can interfere in nature. Outside, but as far as nature is concerned, everything is determined. But and Kadosh Baruch Hu is the first cause. But as the first cause, Kadosh Baruch Hu can change things, can do miracles, can interfere. Spinoza accepted the first part of Hasdai Crescas. Lutzato Shadal says, namely that everything is determined. But he also said that Hashem is determined. Right? That Spinoza also said that Hashem is determined. And then he said, so you can see, he can say that Rav Hasdai was right. It's something Pirsum Hamon. You have to be careful. Spinoza is part of the Hamon. Right? So since you have to be careful about Pirsum Hamon. Okay. Now we move on to 8. Now remember in Deot, we had a problem with Deot already. The question of when we discussed whether there's a mitzvah lahavim. Rav Hasdai Crescas says that you can't, that there's no rashut on Deot. I have a rashut whether to drink the cranberry lime seltzer or not to drink the cranberry lime seltzer, but I don't have a rashut to believe that the cranberry lime seltzer is on the table. That's forced on me. The deya is forced on me by my mind. Right? It's forced on me by my seichel. I can't have another view. I'm not free. So that's why Rav Hasdai Crescas says we're not free to believe. With regard to Deot, the Metziut forces itself upon us. And that's especially the case if we're talking about scientific things, and even more the case if we're talking about Nevuah, prophetic things. Okay. So he goes on and he says, V'hine, b'deot asher b'pinot hatoriot. Right? What about all the emunot that have to do with the pinot of the Torah, the emunot of the Torah? Ech yiyeh bahem gemul v'onesh mi yiten v'edah. This is really at first a serious question. How are we going to explain sachar v'onesh for emunot when we're saying that emunot, you don't have rashut on emunot? And we're also saying that it's only fair to give sachar v'onesh for something that you have rashut for. Omar shehamamin emunah ma v'kol shaken im hi emunah moftit, namely if it's proved, if you have a belief that's logically proved, emunah moftit, I efshar mi bilti sheyargish chiyuv v'hechrach gamor lahamin ha'emunah hahi. If logic forces you to hold the belief, like 2 and 2 are 4, you have to feel that you're forced. You're forced. You can't believe something else. Your intellect forces you to believe that. V'kol shaken im hi emunah moftit. Moftit ve'i efshar okay. Emunah hi. V'zeh achar shehameniah hahu chazak hachiyuv im himaleit mimenu. V'hu hamofet hamuchlat achar shehinachnu emunah moftit. הנה החיוב וההכרח מבואר נגלה מורגש אצלו, שהוא נמנע בחוקו להאמין סותר האמונה ההיא. Once you have a belief that's based on reason, you're not free to believe something else. ולזה אם היה המין הזה מהכרח רצוני המורגש בו, בלתי ראוי הגמול והעונש עליו, כפי מה שהונח, הנה Lo asher ech yetachen hagumul v'ha'onesh be'emunot. Here he's raising the question that we have a problem. We have to have an explanation how we can explain reward and punishment for beliefs when we're saying that beliefs are not voluntary. So how can we explain reward and punishment for beliefs? And he goes on and he says. Number 9, v'nomar she'achar shehitba'er she'ein al ha'emunot mevo l'ratzon. After we have proved that beliefs are not voluntary, ein lahem mevo l'ratzon, aval ha'ma'amin hu margish b'hechrach, asher lo al heyoto ma'amin. But with regard to all these emunot, the emunot, you're forced to believe these emunot. You don't have a choice not to believe emunot. הנה הוא מבואר שאין הימלט אלא בשנשים הבחירה והרצון על עניין דבק ומחובר מן האמונות. So he's saying you're not getting sachar va'onesh for your emunot, but you're getting it in something that's connected to the emunot. Samuch umeitzran lehem, right? Milashon bar meitzar, right? You're getting something. You're getting the reward and the punishment not for the emunah itself, but for something that accompanies the emunah and the emunah. V'hu ha'arevut v'hasimcha asher lanu. So you get rewarded for the happiness and the pleasure you get in the emunot. Kasher chanan otanu Hashem emunatenu. V'charitzut la'amod al amitata. So you get.
Interesting that I mentioned the ha'ava.
Right, because he's saying you're getting the reward for the simcha you're getting in the emunah, the pleasure you're getting in the emunah, and also charitzut, the effort you're making to get the emunah. Right? That, a person's having trouble with it. Person's having trouble to emunah, so he goes and sits in the yeshiva, goes and learns all day, right? He comes to the lecture, right? Okay, so the person, you have charitzut. You make an effort to get it.
Which in itself is also determined.
It's also determined, absolutely. But still, absolutely, it's also determined. But it's voluntary determined. It's determined and it's voluntary. It's determined, but it's roshut, right?
Could you explain elaborate a little bit more about this concept that you say over every time? It's roshut. It's voluntary determined. Could you explain it a little bit more?
Explain it. Okay, I will explain it very. Let's say we're accepting what Rav Hasdai Crescas said, that if you have the sibot, you have the mesubavim, right? Once you have the causes, you're forced to have the effects. Basic science. You have the causes, you have to have the effects. So there's no place to break the system. Every time you have an effect, you can ask what were the causes. Okay, so we have a completely deterministic world. Nonetheless, when I was asked, do you want the cranberry lime seltzer? I said, yes, I want the cranberry lime seltzer. Now, that decision had causes just like everything else. But it was my will. Now, had I been bought, instead of the cranberry lime seltzer, plain seltzer, it would also have causes, but it would not be in accordance with my will, because my will was to have the cranberry lime soda. Now you can say, well, what does it matter? Well, suppose, let's say I don't like Coca-Cola, or I'm allergic to Coca-Cola, or if I drink Coca-Cola, I get sick. And they bring me Coca-Cola instead of cranberry lime, so well, what's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal, because I wanted the cranberry lime, and the Coca-Cola is going to make me ill. Even though all these things have causes. But there are some causes which are
more powerful than others.
pleasant. Well, I don't know. They're not that they're more powerful, but they're pleasant to me. There are some causes that fit my being, that fit my existence, that fit my taste. My taste is that I want the cranberry lime, right? And that's the causes fit it. Because that's what I am. What is everyone? Everyone is a bundle of or a collection of all the causes and effect that has been you. The relationships with your parents and with your teachers and with your friends, things that you've studied, sforim and shiurim. That's what everybody is. And that's what makes you an individual. What makes you an individual is all these experiences that you've had. Everyone has different experiences. Everyone has different parents, different family. And the relationships with your family, the relationships, things that you've done, things that you've eaten, things that you've experienced, things that you've learned, All that's what make you up. Your experiences with your teachers and with your family, people that you work with, right? All these things are what make you a person and what make you different from everyone else. And what makes some people like cranberry lime soda, seltzer, and some people don't like cranberry lime seltzer. And but all things have causes, but some causes fit me as an individual, and some causes don't fit me as.
But they're both deterministic.
They're all deterministic.
There's desire and your action are both deterministic.
Right, they're all deterministic. They're
Including the allergies.
exactly.
Does that mean that the will is purely subjective, and the subject himself is also a product of other sibot, other causes? Meaning, the difference between the reshut and the akol tzafui is that subjectively, when I experience my feelings or my will, or desires, I'm more connected to it. But it's just because subjectively I'm closer to them. Then other causes that necessarily could be.
That's right. Right. That's right. What makes it the will is that it fits you as a subject.
But I'm also a product of my parents and my education and so on.
That's right. But still, that's a very important thing because that's what you are. Nobody else is the same as you. What makes
why
you?
My joy is a reason for reward? Why my charitzut or my hard working and so on? Why is that the reason? It's also part of my subjective product.
Right.
So how does he solve the question at 8?
Because that
Or
means
9, sorry.
it means that those emunot are something that you want. One can even go, and I wrote in my little book on Hasdai Crescas, and I still think it's true. I think it's true that if you look at it from this point of view, if you have two people, if you have an atheist who is very, very sad that he's an atheist and he's doing everything. He goes to shiurim, he learns Talmud all day, he does everything that he can do to get emunah. And he has tremendous tsa'ar that he's unable to get emunah. And then you have someone else who's born a chassid and he says all the time, oh, it's really terrible to be a chassid, but what can I do? That's how I was brought up, and it's really no enjoyment being a chassid. I wish I wasn't part of this. Well, from this point of view, the atheist who is doing everything in order to get emunah is on a higher level. So, but I think that's really what he's saying. He's saying because what makes it's also a little bit deeper for Hasdai Crescas, because he's saying really what makes you is your loves and your wills. It's true that it all has causes, but that's what you are. What you
change yourself? Can you become a real Baal Tshuva according to Ḥasdai?
Yes, sure. But there are causes that make you change yourself. But what makes a person a person is what a person loves. What a person loves and what a person wants is what makes you what you are. Not what you know, but what you want. And therefore,
we'll have a chance to elaborate
Right,
a little
okay,
later.
let's look
We're
at-
going to wrap it up very quickly and then have a break.
let's wrap up.
Can we finish that what you started, the voluntary will? You started explaining what the voluntary will is.
Right.
I think we finished it.
Right. All things have causes, but some things fit me personally. Fit me, and it's a very important distinction because we all have different parents. We all.
What is it voluntary?
Because voluntary means that it's my will that I can pick up the pen or not pick up the pen. I have that will. That's my will to pick up the pen or not to pick up the pen.
But it's a fiction. The will is a fiction. It's not, doesn't represent
There's no
something
voluntary
real.
will.
It has, it's superficial, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It still is.
Now I'll make another statement. In the history of philosophy, since the days of the Greeks, there have been some philosophers who simply can't accept the idea of determinism, but and say exactly that. It's just a fiction. That if you say that once you say that there's determinism, you're saying the will is just a fiction, and there's no way to convince those philosophers because determinists have been trying to convince them since the beginning of philosophy.
You're saying
But there are
that
other
it's
people.
determined that they think so.
They're determined that they think so. Exactly. Precisely.
Here you're trying to have the cake and eat it. He's saying there is will and there's voluntary will. So how does voluntary work fit with
We're
that?
gonna get back to it because really, Professor Haberthal is here. Let's wrap up the shiur, and then we're gonna have a 10-minute break.
Okay.
We're gonna do the Q&A.
So
Thank
you'll
you.
see everything comes together in the final, in this final comment, Perush here. But Vayityatzvu betachtit hahar, right? Har Sinai, Ma'amad Har Sinai, Vayityatzvu betachtit hahar. Milamed shekafa hakadosh baruch hu aleihem hahar kegigit. V'amar lahem, im atem mekablim et haTorah mutav, im lav sham tehei kvuratchem. Mikan moda'a rabba le'oraita, af al pi chen, hadur kibluha yemei Achashverosh, dichtiv kiemu v'kiblu haYehudim, kiemu ma shekiblu kvar. Okay. V'yeh beyur, right, you know this, I mentioned in the bottom here, this Historon Proteron. You have two examples of Historon Proteron. Na'aseh v'nishma v'kiemu v'kiblu. It's where you put the earlier, it's like, I also gave this article here, it's similar to Mukdam u'Muchar b'Torah. When you put the Mukdam before when you put the Muchar before the Mukdam, that's what's called in Greek Historon Proteron. And that's what Na'aseh v'nishma v'kiemu v'kiblu. They're both examples of putting the Muchar before the Mukdam. And the Muchar is put before the Mukdam for rhetorical reasons. Okay. V'yeh beyur ha'ma'amar hazeh. Now he's going to explain the kafalei harkagiyit. Lama shehitba'er sheha'emunah hanikneit be'emtzaut hakdamot sichliot v'kol sheken be'emtzaut ha'nevuah shehayta b'maaseh hanichbad ha'u. Emunah that's based on the intellect, and Kal V'chomer, that's based on the revelation at Har Sinai. Lo yeh el haratzon shum mavoba. There was no will at Har Sinai. When you were present and you saw when you were present at Ma'amad Har Sinai, you didn't have the option not to believe. The experience of Nevuah was so powerful that you didn't have the option not to believe. וכל שכן באמצעות הנבואה שהייתה במעמד הנכבד ההוא, לא יהיה אל הרצון שום מבוא בה. הנה אם כן, היה להם שיאמינו, ירצו או לא ירצו. Right? They had to believe whether they wanted to or not. Their emunah was not voluntary. הנה אם כן, היו מוכרחים על האמונה, ודימה הדרשן, ההכרח הזה, כאילו כפה עליהם הר כגיגית. What does it mean, כפה עליהם הר כגיגית? The experience was so powerful that they didn't have a choice. Right? So he's interpreting the Midrash. It doesn't mean literally that the Kadosh Baruch Hu picked up the Har Sinai and held it over their heads like a mountain, but he's saying the emunah was so powerful that they didn't have a choice. Forced themselves. They were forced. כדי שיקבלו על כורחם. הנה, שהוא אונס והכרח ניכר. Right? They believed. The belief was forced. It was onus v'hechrach nikar. Kain v'rov ha'otot v'ha'atzumim. And all the miracles at Har Sinai and the kolot, it was all forced. The emunah was forced on everyone who was there. Uv'chatimat ha'ma'amad hahu ha'aminu b'hechrach b'torah ושאם יסורו ממנה, שיהיה נוטעים מדרך החיים, and they understood that if you don't accept the Torah, you're moving away, you're deviating from the way of life. אשר כינה הדרשן המיתה וקבורה, אם לאו שם תהי קבורתכם. In other words, the experience at Har Sinai was so powerful. Everybody realized that it's Har Sinai, the Torah is life, and if you don't accept it, it's death. V'lezeh amar hacham ahu, mikan moda'a rabba l'oraita. Ki im heyota amitit, b'li safek, the question of these emunot that were revealed on Har Sinai were absolutely true. Omnam, achar she'ha'emuna alea hayta hechrachit. The emunah was completely true, but it was forced. It was emunah hechrachit. It was forced. Ein mavo l'ratzon aleha, v'ulai lo kibluha kiratzonam ha'bechiriyi, v'hamishabed otanu lahimashech achareha. And therefore, since we didn't accept it by ratzon, then we don't really have the obligation to fulfill it. Let's just complete what he says. V'zeh shehu mevoar, she'im heyota emuna emitit, ein safek ba, im lo kibalnuha ela, im lo kibalnuha, if we didn't really accept it freely, ein derech el ha'onesh hagadol, ke'ilu kibalnuha, כאילו קיבלנוה להימשך אחרי מרצוננו. So now let's just see how he explains the rest of it. ולזה השיבו, but there's a response, הדור קיבלוה בימי אחשוורוש, דכתיב קיימו וקיבלו היהודים, קיימו מה שקיבלו כבר. כלומר, אחר שנראה שבאמצעות השמחה שהיו שמחים על הניסים ועל פורקן שנעשו להם בימים ההם, right, which is fitting for Purim Katan that we talk about these ניסים, קיימו מה שקיבלו כבר. So what's this thing about קיימו וקיבלו היהודים? In Purim, the happiness, the kiyumu v'kiblu, the simcha that they had in Purim, they accepted the Torah. They accepted that emunah. The emunah was in simcha, and that was what they get the reward for. V'harei hamoda'a b'teila me'aleha, and that's the moda'a rabba d'oraita. The simcha is mivatelet et hamoda'a. כי הערבות והשמחה שבו נתלה הגמול באמונות כבר היה על השלמות בימי אחשוורוש. בימי אחשוורוש קיימו וקיבלו היהודים. That was the because of the simcha of the nes, that was what made the acceptance of the Torah voluntary. וזה כולו משל על מה שנתבאר בדברינו. כל העניין הזה, this whole Gemara about נעשה ונשמע וקיימו ליהודים, it comes to tell exactly the point that we're talking about now. That the Moda'a Rabbah L'Oraita means that you're accepting the Torah without Rashut, without the Simcha, but once you have the Simcha and Kimu v'Kiblu Yehudim, then the Moda'a Rabbah is מבוטלת. וזה כולו משל על מה שהתבאר בדברנו, אם היות האמונה בדעות זולת רצון, right? The emunah b'deot is not voluntary, it's zulat, forced, b'zulat ratzon. Ve'im heyot ha'gemul al ha'ratzon v'hasimcha b'iyoto ba'al ha'emunah ha'i. V'hasimcha, the gemul is on the simcha,